Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this pre-college informational session for Ripple Effects Water in a Warming World. My name is Laurel Zaimashihi. I lead the pre-college, K-12, and educator offerings at the Columbia Climate School. And today I'm joined by the experts of the workshop, Margie, Turrin, and Marisa Annunziato from Lamont-Doherty Earth Observatory from the Columbia Climate School. So over the next hour, we're going to be sharing more information about the pre-college workshop for this fall 2025 semester. So if you are not familiar with the Columbia Climate School or joining us for the first time, the Columbia Climate School, we have a mission to develop and inspire knowledge-based solutions and to educate future leaders for just and prosperous societies on a healthy planet. And the school was intentionally set up in a way that allows us to better connect and amplify and advance new areas of climate inquiry, research, and impact across Columbia and beyond. And so for these pre-college workshops, the Climate School, it's a part of the Climate School's commitment to offering transdisciplinary educational opportunities for high school students, as we recognize that you all are the next generation of change makers and essential stakeholders to address the climate crisis. The pre-college programs are for high school students grades 9th through 12th who are interested in extending their learning beyond the classroom in the areas of climate and sustainability. These workshops provide an educational experience for students that are passionate about the environment and curious about how they can incorporate climate science and sustainability into every career that you may be interested in, not just within the climate science field. And these programs offer the same level of quality and rigor as our degree programs, as they're taught by Columbia faculty, researchers, practitioners, educators, and staff. So this workshop is 15 hours in length and it's offered in English. The workshop is going to run from October 18th through December 6th. We're skipping the Thanksgiving week. And these are all Saturday sessions running from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, with the last session running from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. That 3-hour session at the end is a special time for you all to share about the projects that you'll be working on. These workshops are fully virtual and they're offered through Zoom meeting for each session. And each one of our sessions is recorded. So if you find that you might have a conflict on one of the Saturday sessions, no worries. You can catch up on the recordings and always follow up with Margie and Marisa about any of the content that you may have additional questions on. This is not a course that has any readings or homework. There will be a final project that allows you to apply the new knowledge into an applied and practical community-based project that you'll be sharing at the end of the program. So allows you to apply these skills. And while we ask you to complete some tasks here and there, and including the final project, there are no official gradings that happen as part of the workshop, and therefore no transcripts from Columbia University. This is an open enrollment opportunity, and there's no application process. There's a registration process that I can share the link in shortly. And everyone at the completion of the workshop will receive a certificate of participation as the workshop wraps up. It's a non-credit course, and you're not a student of Columbia University through the participation of this program. So the fee for this Water in a Warming World workshop is $1,900. We do offer reduced rates for former participants of the workshop, students that are children of staff or faculty or alumni of Columbia University, students from Title I schools, and as an attendee of this live informational session, you're also eligible to receive a 10% discount. So I will be following up in an email to share that discount with you so you can apply it for the registration of this workshop. So the deadline for registration is October 10th, which is 1 week before the workshop starts. So make sure to mark your calendars, and we're happy to answer any questions between now and that registration deadline. Okay, so just a few more Zoom etiquette pieces. You're welcome to use the Q&A box for any targeted questions that pop up for Margie and Marisa. We're also, as I mentioned, going to have a discussion at the end of this session, so you'll have a chance to unmute and ask them directly. And the chat box, as you can see, is open, but we'll keep it relatively quiet while they go through their presentation. All right, so without further ado, I will hand it over to Margie and Marissa.
Awesome. Thank you, Laurel, for that introduction. So we're going to start off talking a little bit about this workshop that we're planning on running this fall. So the title is Ripple Effects, Water in the Warming World. So we're going to be considering water all across Earth and how it's being impacted by climate change. So my name is Marisa Annunziato. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator at Lamont-Doherty Earth Observatory, which is part of the Columbia Climate School. And through my role, I work with various youth groups, students of all ages, working on a variety of different environmental focused programs, projects. One of the big things that Margie and I both do is we do a lot of research on the Hudson Estuary. We run different education programs and community science programs, but we also sort of step back and look at the world in general. We talk a lot about sustainable practices and sustainability. We also sort of go over to the poles and focus on the Arctic and the Antarctic. So Marky and I both, look at environmental problems all across the globe. And I'll let Margie introduce herself as well.
Great, thank you. So I'm Margie Turrin, and I'm Director of Educational Field Programs at Lamont-Doherty. And this particular topic is one that's so well suited to Marissa and myself. We couldn't have picked a better topic, to be honest. We both work around we have different backgrounds coming in terms of our experience in different water-based environments. Marissa has this wonderful experience in kind of tropical environments and corals and things, which we'll showcase and talk about in a little bit. I've had a little bit more experience in working in the polar regions, so in these frozen components, and both of us have worked in marshes and wetlands, so really tailor-made, and we're really looking forward to being able to pull all this together and have a chance to share and learn from you all as well about what is your interest and importance in all of this. And I'll pass it back to you.
So Margie and I were actually just walking around in a marsh earlier today. All the different birds and trying to see some fish. We saw a beaver dam, which was very exciting as well. So we didn't see a beaver. I was a little sad about that, but we did see their home at least. So I wanted to go over a little bit about why this workshop is so important and why Margie and I are really excited about running this workshop this fall. So water is a really important resource on Earth. Most of the globe is covered by water, and it's really essential for life on Earth, for us to be able to drink, for life to even exist on Earth. Water was essential. And so it's a really important resource that we really need to be mindful of, to protect and manage correctly so that we can protect that resource for all different populations. Oceans and wetlands are a really important part of the climate system. So we'll talk a little bit about the climate system in general and water's role in that climate system throughout this workshop and how it is being impacted. So oceans and wetlands are a really important part of the climate system. They are involved in something called blue carbon, which we'll delve into during one of the lessons to talk about blue carbon, green carbon, and other types of carbon. Climate change is really posing a lot of different challenges to water on Earth. So we can think about the way in which it's changing different aquatic environments, warming up water temperature, raising sea levels, really changing the chemistry of different water bodies as well, and subsequently destroying or altering these habitats. We're also seeing impacts to precipitation worldwide. So different changes to water from climate change is going to be different at different parts of the globe. So we'll take sort of a global look, but we'll sort of also investigate local impacts based off of where our different students as part of the workshop live or are locationally, like regionally in. So it can either cause droughts, and we're seeing more and more drought-like periods happen in various locations, and it can also cause the opposite. So it can cause these flash flooding events that overflow different systems. You can see a lot of infrastructure damage in a lot of areas due to increased rainfall as well. And as I mentioned, we're also seeing global sea level changes, and that's changing at different rates in different ways in different locations and posing a range of different issues to humans as well as habitats. So it's important to acknowledge that climate change is just not going to impact our environments and wildlife and different habitats and ecosystems, but it poses a large risk to humans and to public health. So one of our big concerns with climate change is that it may end up contaminating different waterways. And some of the ways that might happen are through these flash flooding events, bringing in potential contaminants from the land into water, or causing something called combined sewage overflow systems to release sewage into waterways. And that poses a risk to human health. You don't want to interact with the water, you don't want to be recreating on the water, or fishing or swimming in it when there's potential contaminants in a waterway. It also threatens our drinking water sources. So with droughts, we're having less rainfall, less fresh water to use as drinking water. We're seeing the salination of some freshwater sources that are used for drinking water. And there's also the potential of some of those contaminants to get into drinking water sources. So it's not just impacting our environment, it's impacting humans, and it is really a public health crisis. And it's important to remember that no part of Earth is not going to feel the effects of climate change. They're going to feel effects differently, but all parts of Earth will be impacted by climate change. So it's not just one specific area that will be impacted. And throughout this workshop, Margie and I are going to talk about how we can help the problem. So on the last slide, I talked a lot about different threats to our different ecosystems, to public health, things of that nature. But there are people out on the ground right now thinking of really innovative solutions and doing a lot to address these problems, find solutions. And so we can do this in a variety of different ways. We can really focus on water conservation and management, so making sure that we are conserving our water resources and managing them properly to protect them currently and for future use. You can see this in policy and governance. So a lot of different policies can be passed to protect water, protect ecosystems, make really beneficial change. And so this is happening within multiple municipalities across the globe. Technology and innovation. There are really insightful technological advancements that are happening every day that are meant to address some of these problems that we'll talk about throughout the workshop. And finally, public awareness and education. So you guys are already taking the first step by potentially joining our workshop, but we can't expect people to change their actions or advocate for things if they're not aware of the potential risks or problems. So education and awareness is a really big role of helping the problem that we'll talk about. And we'll tie in solution and different approaches to deal with some problems and some changes that we are seeing and expected to see all throughout the workshop. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Margie.
Can I ask you to go back just to the last slide? Because while you were chatting, something came to my mind. Yeah. So it was so interesting to me to look at this slide, which Marisa had put together. And I had seen it before, but it just dawned on me that this is a topic that we've talked about a lot. I'm on our local water quality board, like our water management board in the county. And the order of these four solutions has been something that we have debated at many meetings. Where should we start? Should we start with policy? Should we start with public awareness and education? What's the best approach to dealing with the problem? And I think that that in itself is such an interesting backdrop to everything that we don't really know the best approach. We're still debating this in our, in our different groups and communities. And so having this conversation with you all, I think will be really fun to figure out where you feel that this could go. Thank you, Marisa. I was looking at it, I was just like, oh man, that's so interesting. Okay, we'll pop to the next slide. Thank you. So what will you guys be doing? What will you take away? And I think that always we want to know what's the benefit to me. So our goal is that you will gain this really great understanding of how climate change interacts with the climate system, so impacts it, but it's a constant interaction. So looking at what are the feedbacks, which is a really important part, which makes it so dynamic. So that's one piece that you'll take away. You're going to really learn about how important water is in many different levels on Earth. So we'll look at a whole range of different systems. Marisa mentioned so many cool things. We're going to look at how water plays into each one of those, and kind of think about how those, again, interact with each other. It's all a big system. So kind of looking at all those interactions, I think, is really fun. We're going to look at different habitats. There's so many different habitats, depending on where you are, what environment you're in. We want to look at how those aquatic habitats are functioning in a changing world, potentially how they might be impacted going forward, and what did they once look like, and how do they compare to that now? So we can learn a lot by looking back as well as looking forward. Marisa mentioned really nicely the whole concern about public health. We're going to focus on that. We're going to look at the whole concept of water security. We'd love to kind of tap into this idea of privatization of water. Should water be public? Should it be privately managed? What's the trade-off there? There's so many different ways of looking at it. Who owns water? How is it managed? That's its own topic. So that'll be fun to talk about. And then throughout it all, we're going to be looking at different solutions, different approaches to how are we able to manage this? What are the choices that we have available to us? What are some possibilities for us in terms of controlling and having a say in what's going on with water now and going into the future? And then the sixth thing, the final thing, is that we're really going to take this locally and we're going to explore and think about local impacts. So you'll be coming from different environments, different backgrounds, different locations. And so we would like to learn a little bit about what's going on in your local environment. This might be where you choose to do your project, looking at your own something very local and how the things that we've talked about play in locally. It might be that you want to take an environment that's very different, that's not local, and that's fine too. Perhaps you're passionate about a specific wetland or a specific tropical area. That's fine. We want you to find something that you have a passion for, and we'll help you with finding resources and ask you just to kind of do a little project around that. We find that the projects are one of the most powerful ways for this information to kind of really sink in and for to give you something to take away from it and perhaps share. And also for us to kind of learn from you, which is always a true two-way street. Okay, next slide. So these are the topics that we picked for the workshop. And again, I think Marisa mentioned earlier, we kind of adjust based on who is in the workshop. So if there's something that we haven't really picked up that you really would like to talk about, our first session is the one where we spend a lot of time getting to know the students. And we would love to hear back from you if there's something that you really feel that you would like for us to cover. That gives us some time to dig into it and put it together for you as a resource. But this is our starting plan, if you will. So the first session will be climate versus water. What's that tug of war look like right now? Is it possible for us to really make this work better? And again, kind of just laying the big background. Our second session, we're going to dig into marshes and wetlands, something that both Marisa and I have spent a lot of time around. These natural sponges, they are, as Marisa mentions, known as blue carbon, a place where we naturally absorb a lot of carbon. And we're going to kind of explore different types of wetlands and marshes. Our third session is going to be around tropical ecosystems. That'll be one that Marisa does. And she's going to dig into coral reefs, mangroves, seagrasses. This is an area she spent a lot of time when she was working in her college degree. So this will be a fun way for you to learn from somebody that's really spent a lot of time digging into this topic. Then I'll take on the next week and talk about our polar regions. So this is an area where the ice the water that's kind of solid at this point, that's tied up in ice, has been trickling out and being shared around the world. But even the frozen regions are really cool ecosystems. So we'll spend a little bit of time looking at those and what are the climate threats that are going on there. Then session 5, we're going to look at we have water everywhere. As Marisa said, most of the world is water, but it's under threat right now. And so there's actually quite a bit of our water is not drinkable at this moment. Never has been, because it's tied up in oceans. But we're looking at how drinking water that has been available might be changing, and are there ways or things that we can look at to help protect those. Um, the sixth session will be about aquatic biodiversity. What's happening with biodiversity under all these changes? Are we seeing a massive loss of different biodiversity? Are we seeing shifting habitats? Yes, we are. So we're going to be looking at some of that. And then, as I mentioned, our last class, we're going to be kind of learning from you, learning about the projects, things that you took away, and how you've created a project around a habitat that's really interesting to you. So logistically, I think actually Laurel covered quite a bit of this, but just, to kind of hit it again quickly, it is all in English. It's done through Zoom. Although we start by saying it's a mix of lecture, there's actually not as much presentation as more. We lay the groundwork with a few slides, then we work in teams a lot of times. So you'll break into subgroups to look into a project. We'll provide a resource, ask you to discuss it, look at it, come back together. We'll talk about it as a group. It's a lot of interaction, discussion, different activities, a lot of conversation. I think we both agree that's the best way to learn. And so we've really kind of targeted that as the way that we approach these workshops. In terms of who participates, it's all high school students. So even though you're coming from all around the country, you have this general age that's a commonality. And we've learned so many different things from what it's like to come from different areas. So I'm sure even around the United States, we know that everything's very different. So it's fun to hear a lot about that. And then finally, our classes run from 10 to noon on Saturdays, with the exception of the last class, which will be 3 hours, because that allows us this kind of sharing of things. We start October 18th. We go straight through with Saturdays, with the exception of Thanksgiving. And on Thanksgiving, we take a break, and we'll be back for the meeting on the 6th. And that gives you a little bit of extra time to work on your projects as well. And with that, I think we wanted to actually open it up, have some conversations. We'd love to encourage you to pop your cameras on. And we would love to hear about what habitat it is that you're primarily interested in, what brought you to this information session, and any questions that we might have to answer. And I see there is a question: what other outreach events and programs does Lamont host? So we normally have an in-person. I think, are you in Manhattan, Catherine? I can't remember. Yes, New York City. So we normally have an open house, which is an open event where we invite people to our campus, and we bring out everybody in our campus. All of our scientists are there, our grad students, and we share a lot about the science that we do. I'm from Queens, yay! Okay, we did a workshop for some rangers in Queens, so we know it well. This year, unfortunately, we aren't able to hold our open house. Things are just a little bit tight this year. So we've decided to kind of focus on our science. But this is why we're doing these kinds of workshops, so that we can actually share some of the science and some of the work that our scientists do. And I know Laurel can talk a little bit about some of the other programs that we run. So maybe I'll turn it over to you, Laurel.
Thanks, Margie. Yes, so if you are also, a pre-college high school student that's interested in an in-person opportunity, we do have the Columbia Climate School and the Green Mountains program. It is a 2-week program based in the Green Mountains of Vermont, where you have the chance to learn from 6 or 7 different climate school experts. The goal of this program is to really give this holistic understanding of climate change, from the science of climate change and how do we know what we know through modeling, and how can we predict what's going to happen in the future, to risk and resilience with some experts from the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. We talk about international and local policies, with some policy experts, a little bit of climate finance and circular economy, and then ultimately through all of these different topics that we're exploring in this, relatively short 2-week period, the goal is to equip students with the necessary knowledge and skills to develop their own climate action plan, because we want young people to be community leaders to start driving these solutions forward once they go home. And so this is also a program that has an international presence, which is amazing because all around the world, we're experiencing climate change in different ways. So the students come in, share their lived experiences, and are developing very different projects depending on, what resources they have, what their community looks like, and how they're being impacted by climate. So that's another pre-college program. I can put the link in the chat. If you are looking for some, free engagement, the Climate School hosts events all the time. They typically are in New York City. I will share the link to our events page. And, through Climate Week, there's a lot of events happening through the Climate School. And then also we have our Climate Live K-12 session. So if you're not in New York City and you'd like to join, these are short 30-minute sessions that happen once a month. We highlight a researcher, a student, an expert in the field that's doing work in the climate sustainability space. And we allow them to share about their work, which is a way for you all as, experts and or teachers or young people to learn about the work at the school, but also to kind of start exploring other career paths, because we need climate solutions in every sector, no matter what job you're looking into. So it kind of helps to shine a light on these different opportunities for you to pursue. I wanted to start with you about what was your inspiration to study marine science at college? What were some of the most transformative moments in your life that made you decide to study marine science? Because you're from New York, but then went to school in Florida. So I would love to hear more about that journey.
Sure. I think I am unique in a lot of ways in that it was something I was extremely passionate about from a really young age. My family used to go to the beach every summer, and my mom's from Maryland, and we would go to the beach in Maryland. And down there, it's a big thing to eat blue crabs, like whole blue crabs. You crack them open, you eat them. My mom always talks about how when I was a little kid in my high chair, I wouldn't eat it, I would dissect it. So I would like pull it apart and look within it. And she was like, I already knew you were going to be a scientist. I already knew you were going to be a marine biologist just from that initial moment in your life. But I always loved being at the beach. I watched a lot of nature documentaries as a little kid. And my favorite ones were always the ocean. And if anyone's watched a nature documentary, there's always that sad moment in which they talk about what's happening and the impact to the ocean, or our human influence, or climate change in more recent years. That's a big part of nature documentaries. And I sort of vowed to myself that I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to do something to help the problem. That sort of set me on a trajectory to study marine science, study marine biology, get a better understanding of the ocean so that I could help protect it and conserve it. In my undergrad, I did a lot of research on corals and coral reef ecology. So looking at bleaching and different impacts of coral diseases and climate change on coral reefs. I did things in seagrass beds, looking at changes of seagrass beds as well, the different seagrass plants that grow within it and their coverage. And I spent a lot of time stomping around in mangroves as well in college. And I think I firsthand really saw the impacts of climate change. I mean, when you snorkel over a reef and you see bleached corals, it's like this biggest, like, disheartening feeling. And that just kept propelling me to try to make a difference, make an impact. And that's how I found myself working in environmental education. I want to inspire the next generation to care and be involved in the solution. That was a very long answer. Sorry.
No, that was amazing. And I think, yeah, hearing that journey, it might resonate with some students as well. Like that we have some students that are already doing research in aquatic environments. And so they might have one of those moments that touch them to, inspire that work. And Margie, as an ecologist and also someone that has studied wetlands and research wetlands, all over the US, maybe also other countries. I don't know. Um, I was curious about like what brought you into that work, and then also, outside even your role at Lamont, being a part of the water task force and the importance of, public health and drinking water, and the role that you play in that local community action too, I think is important, and love to hear more about that.
Yeah, thank you for that. So yes, I did do my work in coastal wetland areas in California is actually where I started doing my research and work. And I've always loved working outdoors. That's my environment. And so the chance to be there and to kind of witness the interactions. So that's why I think I'm a systems person. Ecology is all focused on how these different pieces interact. And I just was fascinated by how it all functioned. And I was really fortunate to be able to expand that area of work and study to bring it to the Hudson and look at how the Hudson functions. Um, and then to be able to kind of step into the polar regions, which has been another area that I've just really enjoyed so much, being able to actually go to, Greenland and Antarctica and Alaska and be able to do some work there has been really incredible. I so I have been involved in solution kind of focus as long as I can remember. When I was actually an undergraduate, I worked on a project called Save the Coastline in California, where they were doing a big push to privatize a lot of the beaches. And I, ran out of my dorm room. I ran coastal walks to try and bring awareness to it and met with public, like the elected officials in this area where I had not grown up at all, but I really felt so committed to it and was very passionate about it. And I've stayed there. I got involved on the Hudson when they were looking at desalinating drinking water for our area. I looked at the impact on our area in terms of our water in the Hudson and what it might do to this little brackish environment, and what it might do to the fish and the young of the year, the plankton and things that were there, and got very involved in that. And that's what led me to working on the Water Task Force. And I've really enjoyed working in my own community, having a chance to really participate, think about the different solutions, have the conversations about what's the best place to start. Everybody's passionate, which is great. I mean, everybody that's there has something to share. And we might not see it all the same way, but we all have a passion for the same topic. And I think that that's really important. And being able to have those conversations is really great. And learning how to listen, respond, and prioritize and work together is super important.
That's amazing. And definitely one of the goals that we have for the students in this workshop is to also feel like they can and do have a powerful voice in their own community to push these solutions forward. And I think you both are a role model in this where, you have seen or heard about an environmental challenge and you didn't, sit back and let it happen, but that inspired you to act. And that's, I think, another goal that we have for students is, you know, the challenge of climate change can be so overwhelming and it is a global challenge, but there are roles that each of us can play. And especially when you break it down to your local community, there is a lot of power in that. And I think it makes it a little more accessible.